InvestorIdeas.com podcast.
Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of InvestorIdeas.com podcast, looking at cannabis news, stocks to watch, as well as insights from thought leaders and experts. In today's podcast, I look at early announcements from Australis Capital Incorporated, trading on the CSE as AUSA and the OTC as AUSAF, as well as EPAZ Incorporated, trading on the OTC as EPAZ, Single Point Incorporated, trading on the OTCQB as SING, Fire and Flower Holdings Corporation, trading on the TSX as FAF, as well as Pasha Brands Limited, trading on the CSE as CRFT, and the OTC as CRFTF. But first, before getting into that, Hemp Corp, which is a private company, recently secured a 10,000-acre site to become the world's largest hemp plantation. And this comes following the legalization of hemp cultivation within the state of Uttarakhand, India. So the company will now be managing operations in Uttarakhand and has plans for a variety of base product chain from the hemp. The product chain will vary from health foods, cosmetics, textiles, FMCGs, pharmaceuticals, cannabis-infused Ayurvedic medicines, eco-friendly construction materials, bioplastics, biofuel, and more, as well as hemp-based paper, plastics, and fuel will foster a more sustainable future. So the company is engaging with government officials and liaisons regarding regulatory compliance, and a recent industry development was made by the government in licensing cannabis cultivation, processing, and refinement for the production of Ayurvedic medicines containing CBD and THC content. So the company has made the recent decision to proactively participate in the formation of Cannabis Society for the decriminalization, legalization, and advocacy of cannabis in India, and further is in participant discussions with technologists regarding bleeding-edge technologies in cannabinoid extraction. So Hemp Corp expects the market to grow at an exponential rate over the next 3 years and into the multi-billion-dollar industry, and is seeing a growing interest in foreign investment into India's cannabis space. So first time I've really heard about anyone focusing on the Indian cannabis market right now. Again, as this becomes more of a global industry, certain parts of the world where climate-wise they have a significant advantage over other growers. For instance, that's why a lot of Latin American producers right now are going to see some success with their early harvests, is that they can actually have multiple yield harvests within the year. Same thing with the Indian climate, and we're also seeing the same thing from Israeli companies as well. So as this industry becomes global, you're going to probably see more and more countries pop into this, especially with an agricultural background like India, or with, again, practice and, again, a comfortable climate for dealing with this type of crop, especially for the hemp industry. We've already seen this coming out of China, who's still a massive hemp and CBD producer, and we're probably going to see this now with India. And again, other parts of that region of the world are going to start popping up. And it is going to be these companies and different groups who are also trying to help with the change of societal decriminalization and legalization, and also the advocates for sort of cannabis within society in those countries. And it seems like even though everyone thought that China and India and a lot of those sort of Middle Eastern and Eastern Asian countries were going to be difficult to jump onto the cannabis culture, as a lot of them have it pretty ingrained into their societies still in a negative light, we're now seeing that it turns out the business incentive for everyone is pretty much dragging in every country in the world, and this will become a global industry much faster than it seems most people anticipated. Now moving on to early announcements with Australis Capital, who announced the formation of Cocoon Technology LLC, which is a cloud-based self-service fulfillment platform and wholly owned subsidiary of AUSA. So designed to enhance the consumer experience and reduce labor costs, Cocoon delivers operational efficiency to dispensaries while improving order fulfillment, cash management, bank card acceptance, data analytics, customer loyalty, marketing, privacy, and compliance. Cocoon's platform as a service model delivers contracted recurring revenue, one-time revenue, exclusive multi-year agreements, enhanced product offerings, and all extensive runway of future innovations. The benefits of deploying self-service technology have been demonstrated across the brick-and-mortar retail sectors in the U.S., and AUSA's management experience and leadership in self-service technology positions AUSA for immediate success across North America, states Michael Carlotti, Chief Financial Officer of AUSA. So the estimated market opportunity for kiosk sales for dispensaries in the U.S. over the next 5 years is 50,000 units with a recurring revenue model based on a percentage of sales initiated with Cocoon Pod. Cocoon has met with leading multi-state operators and focus groups with conservative assumptions, suggesting 60 to 80% of returning customers will choose to initiate their purchase through a self-service POI. Cocoon Pod functionality delivers reduced transition times, privacy, coinless cash, recycling, payment getaway, ATM processing, ID validation, QR codes, consumer loyalty, charitable donations, and numerous marketing opportunities through a dynamic user interface. And by integrating Coil, a loyalty and data application built by AUSA's wholly owned subsidiary Rhythm Technologies, Cocoon Pod also offers fully integrated loyalty functionality for consumers, now branded as Cocoon Rewards. So we've seen a lot of service software companies pop up into the cannabis space, especially in the US over the last couple of years. There's a few companies focusing on this in the Canadian market as well, though the Canadian retail is significantly underplayed compared to the US. And this isn't the only type of service software we've seen. There's been a lot of companies who have been trying to unload their different options onto the US market through different dispensaries. And it is interesting there that even in their comment, they do mention that a lot of the retail assessment right now is that only 60 to 70% will be using these types of payment option systems. But we're seeing that this is starting to change in the retail market, whether it's cannabis or any sort of retail, where more and more customers are getting more comfortable with a point of interaction sales system. So we are probably going to see this jump into the cannabis world more specifically, especially into the Canadian markets where they have certain regulations on how they can address or even sell the product, and even in some US states as well. So this type of technology seems an inevitability for the industry, though again, there is a pretty big competition for these service software programs. Next, looking at EPAZ Incorporated, a leading provider of drone technology, blockchain mobile apps, and cloud-based business software solutions, has announced that its holding ZenaPay Incorporated has signed 5 beta customer agreements in order to commercialize its drone smart farming solution. So the ZenaPay team in August beta tested its drone mapping and plant tracking solutions in Ireland on 2 farms, and the beta test was a success, signing up additional beta customers. So EPAZ, which formed Farm Drone Incorporated earlier this year, will license exclusively its drone technology to ZenaPay, and the drone will be called ZenaDrone 1000. It will be the first generation drone they developed for the agricultural industry, and the ZenaDrone 1000 will be a workhorse for farms, which will have multiple functions and features to scan fields and remove the male hemp plant in order to double female hemp production. EPAZ will be maintaining its Twitter page with updates about drone development and the company on a daily basis, and you can visit the link attached in the article. Dr. Sean Pasley, CEO of EPAZ and ZenaPay, said that we believe that artificial intelligence and our facial recognition technology are the next technologies to positively impact agricultural production. Our agreements with 5 beta customers will demonstrate the benefits of the ZenaDrone farm software and the efficiency gained from tracking plant growth from seed to harvest. So there's been a lot of different tracking systems for the agriculture industry, for the cannabis sector, that have come out over the last while. This is the first one that's using drone technology and facial recognition and artificial intelligence software for that same functionality. Right now, that does seem a bit excessive for most of the farms, especially with the scale of the industry right now. But you could see more people adopt this type of strategy over a long time. Obviously, once it has more success with these beta tests, there will be more of an industry understanding of how to use this and also the efficiency of it. But these types of technologies, if it's not using drones, at least some sort of mapping and tracking system for your plant data and your entire farming operation is becoming more and more of almost a necessity in the cannabis industry, as this is what more and more industry experts are requiring, from retailer standpoints, from regulation standpoints, and really also just from inter-industry standpoints. More and more people want to know and have guarantees of the entire tracking system of your production facility. Next, looking at Single Point, who has launched its smokable hemp products. So their newly released brand, 1606 Original Hemp, has gained traction after the attention at the 2019 National Association of Convenience Stores launch, and the company has received orders on the site at the show and gathered over 100 interesting clients that collectively own over 15,000 locations. And Single Point expects to make its large sale in the near future and has shipped orders to a collective 250 locations so far. So the Pure American hemp cigarettes are nicotine and tobacco free, and some research suggests that smoking hemp cigarettes could be a potential tool to replace tobacco and nicotine. According to a Brightfield Group survey of more than 5,000 CBD users in the US, 24% have used to help quit smoking. Quitters are often replacing cigarettes with other smokable hemp or vaping products, and 41% of quitters have entirely replaced tobacco with hemp CBD. And Google Trends revealed that over the last year that hemp was researched more often than tobacco and nicotine. And as the alternative market has continued to grow by 35% from 2019 to 2018, cigarettes have stayed steady at 3.1%. So right now, Single Point's one of the few companies with a hemp cigarette product out on the market. These products, or the potential of hemp cigarettes, have a huge potential to disrupt some of the tobacco industry. And as well, it does help replace the habitual addiction, which many studies have shown is just as effective as some of the chemical addiction of nicotine as well. So they do need an alternative replacement most of the time for that habitual mental side of the addiction as well. And the hemp cigarettes do seem to offer that, as well as through the CBD does help with some addiction, which some studies have shown so far. So it'll be interesting to see if these pure hemp cigarettes do pick up in the industry. Also, if there becomes more competition and hemp cigarettes as a general theme and consumer product pick up as well. It's an interesting concept, but so far it's still pretty infant as far as the industry standards go. Moving on to Fire and Flower Holdings and its wholly subsidiary Hi-Fire, who announced the successful launch of Spark Perks, Cannabis Members Program across the Fire and Flower retail network. So this is pretty similar to what was trying to go through the Cocoon Pod system that Australis Capital is trying to launch. Although Fire and Flower, this is strictly through their Canadian holdings and their Canadian retail programs, so just through the Fire and Flower Holdings stores. So members of the Spark Perk program receive exclusive benefits, including fast lane checkout, special deals, member-only events, and exclusive content. And Spark Perks is free to join, and no cannabis purchase is required to join the program. So since the program's official launch on September 19th of 2019, Sparks Perks has grown to more than 38,000 members, and of those members, 33% have conducted a second transaction since the creation of the member profile. And the initial results indicate that on average, Spark Perks members spend 43% more than non-members per transaction in the Fire and Flower retail network. So this is something that seemed very obvious that should have already existed within the cannabis retail framework that's existed in the US, or at least in Canada starting out, but is essentially some sort of consumer reward and loyalty program. There haven't been a lot of these, or really any of these, in the Canadian retail market so far. And even in the US market, they are few and far between as far as actual official programs running through a chain of retail outlets. There's a few in-store options that a lot of different small retailers have offered, but nothing like an actual loyalty program that transfers over. So even with this Fire and Flower Holdings, this is strictly through one retail chain, whereas Australis Capital's Cocoon program is planning on going to multiple retail outlets and expanding to different states and different chains. So that may be the advantage they see. Whereas again, at least for Fire and Flower Holdings Corp, they are trying to get some sort of consumer engagement program right now. And again, the Canadian market is pretty limited with this. And lastly, looking at Pasha Brands, who commented on the legal retail market in Canada and what separates them from the competition. Really just commenting about the low sales for the cannabis industry right now in the Canadian market and how they've helped see ways around that in certain factors. So between 2014 and 2018, global sales of legal cannabis more than tripled from 3.4 billion to 10.9 billion, according to the State of Legal Cannabis Markets report from ArcView Market Research. And BD Analytics calls for a near quadrupling from 2018 levels to 40.6 billion by 2024 at an annual growth rate of 2.19%. So commenting on this, legal cannabis, particularly in Canada, has been struggling under the weight of burdensome regulations, poor supply chain management, and quality issues, said Jamie Shaw, Chief Communications and Cultural Office for Pasha. Coupled with that, companies in the sector were slow to deliver the results expected and were generally seen as overvalued. Share prices were determined at a time when there was relatively few licenses that seemed to have a stranglehold on the regulated marketplaces. So while these challenges are most pronounced in today's market, for Pasha, it's been an affirmation of its business plan. We never bought into the big box mentality that's causing many of these problems, Shaw said. Pasha is focused on small batch craft producers and has been meeting its goals at a quick pace for its micro cultivation harvest expected in December. So of the first 5 micro licenses issued by Health Canada, PASHA has signed supply agreements with all of them. And PASHA also has signed supply agreements with 60 more applicants currently in the CTLS queue with Health Canada, and another 40 navigating the licensing process with PASHA subsidiary BC Craft Supply Co. Limited. So with 100 microcultivators each permitted to produce up to 500 kilograms per year, PASHA could have the ability to bring up to 50,000 kilograms per year of high-quality craft cannabis to the Canadian consumers. The legal market has yet to see products with the same care and attention to detail that went into the highest quality illicit products, said Patrick Brockman, executive chair of PASHA Brands. PASHA is committed to bringing products on the marketplace that put the consumer first. So this is something I've talked about a couple times in the past, but it's the sort of growth of the microcultivator environment in the Canadian legal system. And PASHA Brands is definitely the leader when it comes to sort of acquiring and working with microcultivators right now. But again, a lot of the other licensed producers are starting to take notice, and a lot of the larger companies are also starting to take notice and start investing into the microcultivator section, as again, a lot of them are starting to see that over a longer term period, and also to compete with the illicit market, which has still been flourishing in the Canadian market, as well as even in some states right now. The illicit market really hasn't been slowing down by the implementation of legal cannabis infrastructure, as a lot of the infrastructure has been slow to go out. The retail systems are struggling behind, and production quality is not comparable price point wise or quality wise with a lot of the illicit markets right now. So I think the approach that PASHA is making, and again, a few other Canadian companies are starting to invest in, and even a few companies in the US are starting to focus on now, as the general trend towards having sort of a fleet of microcultivators under you or under one conglomerate versus having these giant massive facilities, which, as we've seen in the past, if anything goes wrong with them, a huge amount of that product is immediately then shut down. With using a microcultivator program, they're only dealing with one of these microcultivators at a time. So if there's an issue with one microcultivator's product, it's just that one stock of product that would be affected, not the entire batch from all of their different producers. Whereas again, for the large scale facilities, if anything goes wrong at any point within that system, it can be a shutdown of the entire facility plus all of the product coming out or in up to that facility. So again, just like we've seen with the beer market in general in Canada, where craft breweries have become the major sort of player in the beer industry, and a lot of the large conglomerates are now buying them up and sort of having again a stable of very well recognized craft brewers under their sort of conglomerate belt. We're probably going to see the same thing almost exactly play out with the cannabis market, as in there will be again a PASHA Brands company who again is leading the charge on this right now, but having a collection of microcultivators and craft supply cannabis companies under them who are then able to still meet the demand, but you don't have the same system downfalls that can be had from the large scale operations that we've seen so far. That's all for today's podcast. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. That's all for today's podcast. Podcast is now a certified word trademark on the blockchain through Cognate Incorporated CM certification. InvestorIdeas.com podcasts are also available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play Music, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and TuneIn. If you'd like to be a guest or sponsor of this podcast, please contact InvestorIdeas.com. Investor Ideas reminds all listeners to read our disclaimers and disclosures on the InvestorIdeas.com website, and this podcast is not an endorsement to buy products or services or securities. Investors are reminded that all investments involve risk and possible loss of investment. Investor Ideas does not condone the use of cannabis except where permissible by law. Our site does not possess, distribute, or sell cannabis products.